In the kitchen where morning light streamed through the windows, Caroline Hamilton was putting the finishing touches on her daughter April's lunchbox. On the clean countertop, her sketchbook and tablet were neatly arranged, indicating her work at the advertising agency. Even at 38, she continued to strive for the perfect balance between work and parenting. Their home in a quiet residential area of suburban Boston was a warm colonial-style building from the 1920s, characterized by its white exterior walls and deep green shutters. "Mom, how do I look in my new uniform?" Caroline turned at the sound of April's voice coming down the stairs, and there stood her daughter dressed in a brand new basketball uniform. The number 10 jersey with white and blue stripes fit perfectly on her small frame. With her long brown hair neatly tied in a ponytail and arranged with a blue headband, she looked every bit the young athlete about to face a game. "You look wonderful, April. Just like a professional basketball player." As Caroline observed her daughter's growth, she recalled the events from 7 years ago. When April was 3, her husband James became a casualty of a traffic accident. The phone call from the hospital on that rainy night changed her life forever. The days of working desperately while raising her daughter as a single mother. There were times when she would rush around, creating client proposals until late at night while trying not to be late picking up her daughter from daycare. What supported her through those times was the presence of April, who always maintained her bright smile. 3 years ago, meeting Nathan Montgomery, a vice president at an investment bank, brought new light to Caroline's life. Their encounter was during a meeting for a financial advertising campaign she was handling. She was drawn to his hardworking and sincere character, and April also took to him well. On holidays, the three of them would often go on picnics, and April looked forward to Nathan teaching her basketball. After marriage, they became members of the prestigious Montgomery family. However, life with the new family was more complex than imagined. While Elizabeth, Nathan's mother, played the role of a refined, loving elderly lady on the surface, Caroline sometimes felt uncomfortable with the stern look she occasionally showed. Behind those eyes seemed to lurk the pride of a distinguished family that had produced generations of doctors, and disappointment in Nathan, the second son who chose not to become a physician. At the weekly Sunday family dinners, Elizabeth would speak about the brilliant achievements of her deceased eldest son, almost deliberately it seemed. Caroline could sense Nathan's anguish. Since losing his brother in an accident 5 years ago, he had been nearly crushed by his mother's expectations and pressure. His promotion at the investment bank seemed like atonement for not becoming a doctor. Recently, he had been working more weekends, handling important cases. "Will Nathan's mother come to the game today?" To April's question, Caroline answered with mixed feelings. "She promised, didn't she? I'm sure she'll come." On that Saturday morning, despite the harsh winter cold, the gymnasium at Newton Community Center was filled with the excitement of the weekend basketball league. The wooden flooring gleamed in the morning sun, and the voices of parents echoed in the high-ceilinged space. Seated in the bleachers, Caroline watched over her daughter warming up. April would occasionally wave to the spectator seats while practicing passes with her teammates. Each time, Caroline felt her daughter's growth. The buzzer sounded to start the game, and the first quarter began. April's team took control early, racking up points through her assists. Cheers rose from the bleachers, and Caroline's heart swelled with pride. Her daughter was fully demonstrating the results of her daily practice on this court. Just then, Elizabeth quietly took her seat. Wearing a deep blue cashmere coat, Nathan's mother adjusted her scarf with elegant movements and softly said, "Good morning, Caroline." Behind her, several community center staff members were bustling about. Entering the second quarter, the score was 13-10 with April's team in the lead. The excitement in the venue had reached its peak. April stole the ball on defense and raced up the court alone. A perfect fast break opportunity. The spectators rose from their seats. That's when it happened. April's left foot suddenly seemed to stick to the flooring, and her body was thrown forward. Along with a dull thud, her scream echoed through the gymnasium. A moment of silence fell as if time had stopped, followed immediately by screams and voices of distress filling the venue. April! Caroline rushed from the bleachers with her blood running cold. The coach and referees had already gathered around her daughter lying on the court. April's face was contorted with pain, and her right leg was bent at an unnatural angle. Her hands were cold, and tears wouldn't stop flowing from the pain. As the sound of approaching ambulance sirens grew closer, Caroline held her daughter's hand tightly. Elizabeth also accompanied them with a worried expression, explaining the family's medical history to the paramedics. The scene almost appeared as if she was playing the role of the perfect grandmother. In the waiting room at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. While waiting for the X-ray results in the white hallway that smelled of disinfectant, Caroline checked her phone repeatedly. When Nathan finally arrived at the hospital, interrupting his work, the doctor delivered the diagnosis with a serious expression. A severe fracture in the right leg. Surgery would be necessary. Late that night, outside her daughter's hospital room, a police officer approached Caroline. The fluorescent lights in the hallway emphasized the officer's grave expression. "Mrs. Montgomery, we need to talk." Caroline turned with an exhausted expression. "Yes." The police officer checked the surroundings before speaking in a low voice. This might not have been just an accident. At those words, Caroline's world stopped. "What do you mean?" A cold winter wind blew through the white hospital hallway. Outside the window, snow had begun to fall quietly. The police officer's words weighed heavily on Caroline's heart. Not just an accident. She still couldn't fully comprehend the implications of those words. "We received a report from the sports center staff," the police officer began explaining in a lowered voice. "During the routine post-accident inspection, they discovered unusual wear marks on your daughter's shoes. Furthermore, concerning footage was captured on the locker room security cameras." The officer took out a tablet and continued. "This is footage from this morning." The monochrome video showed a figure resembling a cleaning staff member in the dimly lit locker room early in the morning. The person was doing something near April's locker. In the figure's posture and movements from behind, Caroline sensed something familiar. "We also have the results from the shoe examination," the officer continued, carefully choosing words. "We detected components of a special adhesive. From a facility safety management perspective, we've determined that a detailed investigation is necessary." The footage stopped at a scene where the figure was putting some kind of container into a bag. Caroline felt her hands trembling. Various thoughts were swirling in her head. The moment of the accident, how April's foot had seemed to suddenly stop. That unnatural fall. Everything was starting to connect. "Mrs. Montgomery, does any of this ring a bell?" Caroline shook her head. However, deep in her heart, a certain premonition was beginning to take root. It was a terrifying possibility that she never wanted to acknowledge. The next morning, colorful cards and flowers from April's teammates were already overflowing in the hospital room. Pure white lilies stood in a vase by the window. Elizabeth had brought them first thing in the morning. "Everyone's worried about me," April smiled, still enduring the pain. The phone rang. It was Coach Stevenson. "Everyone's waiting for April to recover. Tell her she'll definitely be back." At those words, Caroline couldn't hold back her tears. The school called next, proposing to arrange special support. April was an excellent student, and the school was concerned about her extended absence. However, a different kind of rumor began spreading within the community. The PTA group chat was filling with voices questioning the truth behind the accident. "That fall looked unnatural. I heard the police are investigating." Such words spread quietly but surely. Amidst this, subtle changes began appearing in Elizabeth's behavior. "Caroline, why don't you take a break? I'll watch over her." Her mother-in-law volunteered surprisingly dedicatedly to care for April. She even personally negotiated with the hospital for practical procedures she usually left to others. She appeared to be the ideal grandmother. However, this very perfection made it feel unnatural. What particularly concerned Caroline was the old albums Elizabeth frequently brought. "Look, April. This is your Uncle Michael, your father's brother. He was a wonderful heart surgeon." Elizabeth continued to narrate the glorious history of the Montgomery family. Portraits of family members who succeeded as doctors. Scenes from glamorous social parties. And always returning to stories about her deceased eldest son, Michael. Michael was truly the pride of this family. Each time she heard those words, Caroline felt uncomfortable. And she didn't miss how Elizabeth's gaze would occasionally turn to April's injured leg. Nathan remained overwhelmed with work. However, behind his tired expression, some other emotion seemed hidden. Though concerned about his mother's excessive visits, he didn't speak of it. Sometimes he would ask detailed questions about April's injury from a medical perspective, but each time he would quickly leave the room, as if avoiding conversation with his mother. Late at night, after April had fallen asleep, Caroline often gazed out the hospital room window. Boston's snow-covered cityscape was quiet and beautiful. However, in that quietness, her heart gradually became enveloped in great suspicion. At April's bedside lay a photograph Elizabeth had brought. In it, the Montgomery family members of younger days smiled proudly. Behind those smiles, Caroline began to sense something she hadn't noticed before. Her phone vibrated with a message from the police. New evidence had been found. Caroline sighed deeply as she typed her reply, agreeing to a meeting first thing tomorrow morning. Outside, snow had begun falling again. Looking at her reflection in the window, Caroline pondered. A real enemy might be lurking within this family. And the answer might be what she feared most. Listening to April's quiet breathing, Caroline faced a heavy decision about what actions she should take next. Early morning, a week after the accident, Caroline sat in the police station interview room. Outside the window, the gradually brightening sky announced the start of a new day. Across the old wooden desk, the detective spread out new video evidence. His expression carried the tension of the case's gravity. This is a series of footage from 6:15 a.m. on the day of the accident, the detective pointed at the tablet screen. The high-definition security camera had clearly captured the characteristics of the person disguised as cleaning staff. The refined manner, the pearl necklace swaying at the neck, and the distinctive movement of the left wrist, it was undoubtedly Elizabeth. Particularly, the gesture of touching the pearl necklace was exactly her habit. The footage showed her opening April's locker and meticulously applying something to the basketball shoes. Her movements had the precision of performing surgery. The perpetrator has advanced medical knowledge, the detective continued while showing the expert analysis report. The adhesive used on the shoes was adjusted to cause no issues during normal walking or running. However, it was precisely formulated to show strong adhesion only when weight was applied to the left foot during sudden direction changes. This method couldn't have been achieved without thorough knowledge of body weight shifts and mechanics. Caroline's hands trembled. Elizabeth's unnatural behavior over the past week flashed through her mind like a slideshow. The abnormal devotion, frequent hospital visits, and excessive narration of Montgomery family history, all the unnaturalness now connected as one truth. That afternoon, police searched the large Montgomery mansion. The sight of police officers entering through the imposing entrance with its porte-cochere drew curious glances from neighbors. Elizabeth's study was like a small laboratory. Medical books neatly lined the shelves, alongside precise scales and experimental equipment. Here, decisive evidence was found one after another. The chemical experiment notebook contained perfect mixing ratios for the adhesive. Detailed calculations lined the pages: pressure during weight shift, approximately 150 kilograms, adhesion duration, 0.8 seconds. The drawer contained a cleaning staff uniform and facility master keys. Most shocking was her diary. The Morocco leather-bound diary meticulously recorded her twisted obsession. "We cannot allow the inheritance to go to a child with unsuitable blood for this family. After Michael's death, this family's pride fell to the ground. Nathan continues to disappoint, and now this remarriage to a woman from a common family. April's injury is only temporary pain. This is a necessary measure for the family's honor." The police interrogation room had a clinical whiteness reminiscent of a hospital. Elizabeth, dressed in a branded navy suit, maintained her elegant demeanor until the end. However, her eyes now housed an obsession that had lost all reason. She finally began to tell everything. The Montgomery family has produced excellent doctors for 3 generations. Her voice maintained its usual refinement while conveying an unfathomable darkness. Especially my eldest son Michael was the most brilliant. He became the youngest head of cardiac surgery in Boston at age 33, handling over 200 surgeries annually with a 98% success rate. He was truly this family's pride. Elizabeth continued quietly. 5 years ago, he lost his life in an accident. The remaining second son refused to become a doctor, choosing an outrageous profession like investment banking, considering this family's tradition. And now, a granddaughter of impure blood is set to inherit $5 million. This was a necessary measure to protect this family's tradition. When the interrogator showed the pieces of evidence, Elizabeth began explaining the details of her crime with surprising calmness. I mixed the adhesive based on knowledge from medical school. Calculating body weight shifts, considering the exact angle to ensure injury. Disguising myself as cleaning staff to enter early morning and tamper with the shoes. Adjusting the adhesive strength to ensure a fall during sudden direction changes. Yes, everything went according to plan. Nathan, upon hearing of his mother's arrest, interrupted an important investment bank meeting and rushed to the hospital. His expression carried both the anguish he had harbored for years and a new determination. Caroline, I knew all along but couldn't do anything. He gripped his wife's hand. Mother completely changed after my brother's death. Her disappointment in me, and hatred for the new family. Actually, last week, she told me, if you quit investment banking and become a doctor, I'll forgive everything. But I won't run away anymore. From now on, I'll protect my real family. At those words, Caroline cried in her husband's arms. The invisible wall that had long stood between them was finally beginning to crumble. After April's discharge, they left the old Montgomery mansion and began a new life in a bright townhouse in a quiet Newton residential area. Rehabilitation was not an easy journey. Their daughter, who at first could barely walk a few steps, gradually became able to climb stairs, and then slowly began to run. April climbed the steps to recovery one by one with her inherent brightness and strength. In their new living room hang photos of the three of them smiling. A picture in front of the Christmas tree, one from a holiday picnic, and another celebrating April's discharge. They captured the bonds of a real family that transcended blood ties and family names. After 6 months of rehabilitation, April started playing basketball again. This time, not for victory or records, but purely for the joy of the sport. The coach warmly welcomed her return, and her teammates genuinely celebrated her recovery. Watch me, Dad. Every time April made a shot on the weekend court, Nathan proudly watched his daughter. He now adjusted his work schedule to spend weekends with his family. Caroline found a new form of family in watching the two of them. Life sometimes brings unexpected trials. However, overcoming these trials can create stronger bonds. The spring light streaming through the townhouse windows seemed to herald the beginning of new hope. On the table lay April's new basketball shoes. They shone freshly, as if symbolizing her new steps forward. One Sunday in October, a year after the incident, Newton Community Center's gymnasium was filled with long-awaited energy. As the buzzer announced the start of the basketball game, April, wearing an orange uniform, ran onto the court with her teammates. In the bleachers, Caroline and Nathan watched their daughter's brave figure. After last year's incident, the gymnasium underwent major safety inspections and renewed its security system. The facility staff gave warm applause for April's comeback game. Nice shot, April. Nathan's voice rang out. Having changed from his previous work-centered life, he now never missed watching weekend games. While maintaining his responsible position at the investment bank, he had found his own balance of valuing family time. Elizabeth, following the results of her psychiatric evaluation, began receiving treatment at a suburban facility. The diagnosis indicated post-traumatic stress disorder after her eldest son's death, and excessive obsession with the family bloodline had driven her to the edge. When Nathan visited, she reportedly offered her first sincere words of apology. The old Montgomery mansion was sold, and the proceeds were donated to a medical support fund. Life in their new home brought peace of mind to all three of them. Caroline achieved further success at the advertising agency, and Nathan walked his own path, feeling his family's support. The game ended in a close victory for April's team. However, more valuable than the numbers on the scoreboard was her smile. A pure smile filled with joy at being able to stand on the court again after overcoming injury. After the game, the three celebrated at the local cheesecake factory. April, still excited from the game, animatedly described playing with her teammates. Beside her, Caroline and Nathan exchanged gentle smiles. Sometimes life presents us with unexpected trials. However, overcoming these trials can create stronger and deeper bonds. Outside the window, the autumn sunset cast a warm light. It seemed to be blessing the beginning of this family's new chapter.